Local, live, late breaking. You're watching KMAC.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Mudd. A fan of South Plains politics? Here's your talking points for this week. State Republican lawmakers have been in West Texas talking about energy futures and with it the future of the Texas economy, and we'll take you there. And the resumes are in. Local GOP leaders now have a decision to make to get a candidate on the ballot for a county judge seat before time runs out.
From the studios of KMAC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Bryan Mudd, brought to you by Capital Mortgage Services.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Also this week, showing up. The polling numbers in the open Texas Senate race made headlines this week, and the spin machines on both sides made good use of them. Quinnipiac has Democrat Beto O'Rourke down to just a 6-point deficit. Lyceum has the race as statistical dead heat. Although it's worth to mention that as more conservatives grouse over what they call skewed polling, the less likely they are to even participate. Regardless, though, Republican Senator Ted Cruz made good use of these numbers as a quick fundraising tool. Mr. O'Rourke's people seem pleased that his campaign strategy is working, and that strategy is to show up. The Dallas Morning News ran a headline this week about O'Rourke's visit to the area, saying that residents in Muleshoe were amazed that he came there in the first place. Cruz points out from afar the differences between their conservative and liberal ideas and scores political points without making the trip. But more and more people at least seem to appreciate O'Rourke's effort, if not his politics. Several hundred people shoehorned into the Cactus Theater in Lubbock to listen to O'Rourke this time around, including KMAC's Tori Larned.
As the Senate race picks up heat, hundreds of people filed into Cactus Theater to have their voices heard by senatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke.
I live paycheck to paycheck. I have a full-time job. I work really, really hard at it, and I'm still pretty broke.
O'Rourke hit on many issues he wants to tackle, like universal health care, the opioid crisis,
the thousands who have died of opioid abuse and addiction,
families at the border, and climate change.
The only way that I can ever hope to represent you and serve you in the United States Senate is to show up and listen to you in person.
Independent swing voters also listened in, trying to decide who should fill the Senate seat.
When someone comes to town, I thought it'd be a good idea to go see what they have to say.
Tim Knockin, a political science professor at Texas Tech, says O'Rourke's presence in West Texas has helped him.
Well, this is going to be a big battleground because it's a big chunk of votes in the metro areas of Lubbock.
Knockin says it'll be an uphill battle for O'Rourke in this conservative region.
Issues that are going to swing voters here, clearly the agricultural issues.
A debate between O'Rourke and Cruz in October will be very telling for both West Texas and the state.
I'm just excited that we're going to be able to debate the issues, that we're going to have a contrast between the two candidates, our record of service and our vision for Texas and this country.
Anytime you can get two people who are on different sides talking where people can hear, then they have a chance to make up their own minds.
Tori Larned, KMAC News.
All right, Tori, thank you. This guy's been everywhere, kind of doing the same thing at a local level. Drew Landry, Democratic candidate for Texas House District 83. Good to see you again.
Hey, good seeing you.
Do you find that the buzz around Beto O'Rourke and the willingness to at least listen to what the man has to say has been helpful to you and your work and other Democratic candidates out there?
Oh, absolutely. We started this campaign back in May of 2017, and we've gone everywhere. And one of our first wonderful stops was down in Gale, which Borden County has maybe 500 people in it, and you stop in a place at Gale at the Coyote Country Store, and you see everybody. They get to know you by name. They want you to talk to them. Pull up a chair. We have some things we want to ask you. And that's been this kind of campaign that we've been kicking off. We've been going here, there, and everywhere, listening to anybody, from the Sanders supporters back in 2016 to the presidential voters in for President Trump. So we don't turn anybody away. We go everywhere that we can.
Heavy Republican district, obviously. When you're out there in Gale and places like that, in Brownfield or wherever you're having, what kind of conversations are you having with folks, and what's been their response to your ideas for some of these issues?
Sure. Well, everybody's concerned about their health care. They're concerned about the public education and if their schools are going to be there. Just this last week, we did a press conference on what the TRS board decided to do to reduce the rate of contributions to the retired teachers from 8% to 7.25%. And there's a lot of retired teachers in this area who are very concerned about what that's going to do for their future. There are teachers who are about to retire who are very concerned about this. And the leadership on this, especially from this area, has been nowhere. I mean, you look at what my opponent said just this past week on a radio show. He said, list your 3 top things. TRS reform was nowhere near it. Wasn't even in the top ballpark 5 of things he even wanted to achieve. That's unacceptable. And whenever you have somebody who goes to all these places and listens to people, this gets traction. There's a groundswell of support, and we're going to be very happy as to where that's going to lead us.
Yeah, you mentioned that news conference this week.
Yeah.
This just seems to add to a potential growing problem when it has to do with state support of teachers and finding the money for those types of things. No one seems to be able to find the money in the couch cushions to even add a little bit to it. Do you have a plan there and say, okay, here's where we need to look at to find the funding for this?
Yes, yes, I do. We have brought out our plan to find this money. What we do is we ease away from our addiction to standardized testing with ETS. They took over the contract from Pearson. That's $300 million that we can use for teachers inside the classroom.
Talking about STAR testing.
Yes, talk about STAR testing, indeed. And we also look at how the president has wanted to take over immigration. Great, that's a federal issue. They should have done this a long time ago. That's close to $800 million that the state's been using that we can now put into public education. We closed the loophole on equity and uniform law that was passed over 20 years ago. That's meant to lower your property taxes. Like if you're appraised higher than your neighbor, and you can go to the appraisal board and say, hey, my neighbor has a lower appraisal than I do. Why? Well, corporations are using the exact same thing. And so what we have to do is close that loophole. Last time that was assessed, that would be about $5 to $6 billion without raising a dime of taxes. So I just found us about anywhere between $6 to $7 billion without even tapping into the rainy day fund to help with TRS and TRS care, to help with public education funding, and even with transportation.
Now that's short term though. That's a lot of money, but that is short term. Is that something that's sustainable long term? You think there's still budget money to be had there?
I think once we allow and we close that loophole on equity and uniform law, what that will do is that will bring the corporations into the game. I'm not into raising the sales tax. There's no way. I'm not going to bring in a state income tax. There's no way I'm going to vote for that either. But what we have to really realize is that there is money there, and it just takes courage to really want to put this thing forward.
You mentioned your visits to rural areas, a lot of them here, a lot of different needs. Infrastructure issues will be huge for the next 20-odd years, but no one wants to pay more taxes or income to get that fixed. Where do you balance that in all this?
Right. This all comes into a giant pool as to priorities. Our budget reflects our values. And what we have west of I-35 is a lot of infighting and a lot of other types of ideas that are not necessarily important to us, like bathrooms. I don't think we need to spend time talking about bathrooms and trees and more bathrooms, and especially school vouchers. That's where my opponent and a lot of his colleagues are going on this. And that's really losing sight on what we need here, because we got to have better roads. And you were talking about, you had a story about agricultural aspects and alternative energy. Farmers want wind turbines and solar panels on their farms. That would actually bring in more resources to schools, and that would bring more resources to counties to do transportation issues. So this is how we solve a lot of our problems, is that we diversify our economy, and that we bring everybody to the table on this. These are common sense solutions to these problems.
All right, Drew Landry. He's the candidate in House District 83, probably coming to a cafe near you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's do this week's poll question. Do you think it should be the responsibility of the federal government to ensure that all Americans have health care coverage? Yes or no? Talk to us on our KMAC News Facebook page on everythinglubbock.com. Click Talking Points. Give us your opinion. And coming up, we may have a new Republican county court law candidate by tomorrow night. We'll tell you about it. Plus, football season upon us. Deer season is coming. Right now, it's budget season for the city leaders. First look at the next proposed Lubbock City budget in 5 good minutes with Councilwoman Latrell Joy. Next on Talking Points.